In higher ed, we're all looking for big wins, but reducing a 75% application abandonment rate and achieving a 90% conversion rate, that's next level transformation. Michael Bettersworth, CMO at Texas State Technical College, shares how they achieved this by streamlining the application process with Element 451.
Our Element journey began out of a necessity. We were switching to a new SIS, and the application process was going to pose some real usability issues for us. We felt that application was going to hamper our enrollment. So we began quickly to evaluate different CRMs, different applications. So for context on that, our conversion rate with the prior application had about 75% abandonment of people clicking apply to submit. And the first weeks after going live with Element, we saw an 80% conversion, and that's now up to 90. So improving the usability of that application on the front end process has had a significant advance in our intake.
When technology works for students, it works for you. Visit element451.com to see how simplifying the application process with artificial intelligence will lead to significant results for your institution. Welcome to Mission of Missions. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers. This is the show designed to help you grow, both professionally and personally, in the fast-paced world of higher education. Every other Tuesday, I sit down with senior leaders, new professionals, and difference makers from across higher ed and beyond, where we'll share tips and strategies related to challenging topics like student recruitment, leadership, customer service, enrollment marketing, and time management. So if you're looking for practical advice and conversations that actually move the needle, this show's for you. Grab your notepad or fire up your notes app, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and today I've got a special episode of the pod for you. I'm going to revisit some of my most impactful conversations I had with different guests over the past 8 months. The first part of this episode will focus on the topic of leadership, and the second part will offer some tips and practical advice around how to create more memorable experiences for prospective students and families, both during the campus visit and throughout the rest of the college search process. Before we dive in, I'm also super excited to share that Mission Admissions has been renewed for Season 5. New episodes will be released starting August 26th. Whether you've listened to one, some, or every single episode of the show, please know how much I appreciate you and your time. Let's get started. In episode 55, I was joined by Ken Anselment, whose background in higher ed enrollment and leadership spans nearly 3 decades. I asked Ken what it means to be a leader and what the most surprising leadership takeaway was from his book, Climbing the Admissions Leadership Peak.
I think being a leader isn't about the title. I think sometimes you get the title and you're put in a position where you have to lead other people, but it's really about setting expectations and setting an example, and then helping people get to the things you need them to do as a leader, but also the things that they probably need to do to continue to grow on their own personal journey. It's such a massive topic, and I realize I waded into it with a podcast and with a book, which means supposedly I should have a point of view about leadership, but it's something that continues to change for me. The more people I talk to, the more I think about it. It's about setting a good example for others. When it comes to work, et cetera, then of course, holding them to some expectations and some accountability. But really, it's about being somebody who can bring out the best in other people.
You recently self-published Climbing the Admissions Leadership Peak, Lessons from the ALP, your book. And it's a collection of quotes and anecdotes from, the more than 80 leaders you've had on your podcast. What was the, most surprising, if there was one, Ken, kind of finding that you had in your book?
Thank you for mentioning the book. I appreciate that. I think one of the most surprising things is how many people who are in leadership positions suffer from imposter syndrome. People who I look at as top of the profession, like I admire them and think, I want to be more like that person. How many of them suffer from their own self-doubt? And in some ways, you could say that the flip side of that is an essential humility that makes people a good leader. I think there's a fine line between humility and sort of self-imposed limitations that come with the humility. But I think the number of folks that referenced suffering from, either directly or indirectly, some sort of imposter syndrome was remarkable to me. And in a weird way, kind of comforting, because it made me feel like I was a little more normal, because I had it terribly in my role as a leader.
What do you think imposter syndrome, if we really break it down for most people, is at its core?
It depends on who you are. Some of it could be perfectionism. Some of it could be fear of failure. Some of it is from people who have probably became acquainted with the Peter Principle when they were younger, somewhere in their education, and are afraid that it's going to happen to them, that they will rise to the level of their own incompetence. But I think it's fear of making a mistake. Or, and I'll speak from my own faith tradition, it could be the Catholic piece of you, which is at least the way I was raised. Don't get too big for your britches, right? Don't think that you're better than anybody else. And so there's this self-governing that kind of comes into play a lot. And sometimes it's also holding yourself back. I think of Joy St. John, right? She's the director of admission at Harvard. But she told a story, and this comes back to the book, right? But when she was at Wellesley, she's a woman of color. She was told by her boss, Jennifer Desjardins, like, why can't you be the face of Wellesley? And it was sort of a crisis moment for her, like, because she had not seen people like her who had been in leadership positions. And so I think there are also cultural forces at play.
Sure.
That make it harder for some people who maybe don't have the kind of models or haven't seen themselves in leadership roles to actually feel like they can be in that role.
If nothing else, as you're listening to this, listening to Ken and I talk for the last few minutes about imposter syndrome, if you're feeling it, I just encourage you to talk about it with somebody, whether it's a fellow leader,
sure.
whether it's,
100%.
Have the conversation, right? Because
Yep.
I also find that too many people, and again, I think to a conversation I had with Sasha Teamy, who I know, who works at Indiana University. And she talked about just how lonely that senior leadership level is. And similarly, we talked about having to have your people and leaning on your people, whether they're people in your industry or people outside of your industry, to have those conversations, whether it's about imposter syndrome or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I often counsel people to have their own board of directors, their board of advisors, and the privilege of being on your board of advisors. I mean, you don't have to say, boy, it's a real privilege for you to be on my board of advisors. But when I have told folks that they're on my board, it's a gracious moment. But I think I agree completely, which is a lot of the imposter syndrome too is the voices that just start bouncing around inside your own head, and having those other folks to talk to about that.
Another common situation and issue that many leaders face is holding people accountable and having tough conversations. In the words of Stephanie Dickerson from the University of Louisville, who joined me in episode 52, everybody wants to manage people until it's time to manage people. Stephanie offered some great advice for leaders who struggle with holding their team members accountable.
So I definitely think it is very easy to be conflict avoidant in roles like this and to just kind of sweep things under the rug. But the more you sweep under the rug, the bigger the pile just gets. And eventually you're stuck with this big mess that you've now created because you didn't directly address a situation in a way that could help you and the employee move forward to a better place of productivity. So I think that just one, open and honest conversations with your staff is the first one. And it literally can be a low stakes kind of conversation where you're first initially addressing the issue like, hey, I noticed that, these things seem to have been going on. I noticed some of your applications are behind, or you seem to be getting behind on emails and communications. You want to talk more to me about what's going on? Is it something I can do to kind of support? So at least you're making them aware that you are aware there's a problem. That's the first thing. So then maybe that puts them on a higher alert to be like, oh, snap, let me reel it back in and like, recalibrate and get back into a place of functioning where my director needs me to function. So just having that conversation initially, usually for me, has been a good starting point to then kind of see them turn themselves around. In a situation where a conversation maybe doesn't work, I do think that whether you think you're being clear verbally is one thing, but it's also another thing to kind of reinforce what has been said in maybe a more written, organized format. I'm a very type A personality, so I love lists, I love bullet points. So if there's something in the better way you can communicate with that person that maybe is better in line with their communication style, maybe that also would transition them into a better place of productivity if there is something difficult you're trying to do with. So I know, again, I'll maybe send a note behind it. It says, okay, just a reminder, here are the things that we kind of talked through. And again, if you need my assistance at any point, please let me know. I think conflict becomes easier to deal with and the person at least feels and knows you're willing to work with them to get to a place to make them better, as opposed to you coming at them from a more aggressive, not the right word, but of a more confrontational standpoint, as opposed to we're going to figure this out together so we can get you back to where I know you're capable of being and where I've seen you be prior to now.
A final leadership thought I want to share with those of you who manage people, or even if your goal is to hold a leadership position one day, is to think about the employee experience in your office. It's really hard for your team to deliver exceptional customer service and memorable experiences if they don't have a good employee experience. Speaking of experiences, we're going through a major consumer shift right now with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They're both extremely experience-driven generations, and many believe the experiences a college or university provides is just as important as the services they provide. In episode 50, Pasquale Romano Jr., a hospitality expert and former vice president of VIP marketing and VIP services for Caesars Entertainment in Las Vegas, talked about one of the most underrated aspects of customer service.
I think it's the follow-up. So people in hospitality, I'm going to speak to hospitality. Obviously, there's other business verticals that require customer service, but in hospitality specifically, it's the follow-up. And that comes with authenticity and a little bit of effort. And, you can smile every day and greet guests and do all those fun things and things that are expected of you. But the follow-up is the most important. Following up, say, how was your experience last night or yesterday? Or was everything good? Or wishing them a simple happy birthday, or just checking in on life and building that relationship. That to me is the most underrated component, is the follow-up. As easy as it sounds, a lot of people do not do it.
One of the big follow-up opportunities I continue to encourage admissions teams to audit and improve is their post-campus visit communication strategy. There are key moments during the college search process where a prospective student's mindset significantly shifts, and one of those is immediately after a campus visit. Students are either more excited or less excited about the idea of being a student at your school, and following up one-on-one and asking some key direct questions is a lot more effective than sending out a survey. Surveys simply don't feel personal. In episode 53, Dr. Matt McLendon from the University of Alabama talked about a common mistake that a lot of schools make during the campus visit and how their new Randall Welcome Center is helping create more memorable visit experiences.
I would say probably one of the pitfalls that's easy to fall into, and I think everybody in this profession has it from time to time, is forgetting the details. And I've often seen that in times where we just haven't hit the mark, which is not that often at Alabama, but where we haven't quite hit the mark is when we get a little lax on the details. And what I mean by that is that everything is sort of buttoned up, ready to go, that we're thinking through the student lens. And that would really be the other part of it, is that if you think about an event or you think about a campus visit, the way that I always try to impress upon our staff and remind myself is that these families have spent gas money. They have made time in their day. They have made an effort to come see your campus. Now, yes, they may be visiting many others that day, but they've come to see you. And if you're not necessarily doing everything that you can to make that visit a memorable experience, then you're not necessarily helping that student make the best college decision. And I think that really comes down to, again, being smart with the details and thinking through really every piece of how that prospective student is experiencing your campus. And it's hard work, and it can at times go awry, but when it goes well, it makes a big difference.
So you obviously have all these cool, different interactive components in the Randall Welcome Center. So much of it to that point I just used, it's interactive. And I got to believe, obviously, that was done very intentionally, from the touchscreen videos to here's a bunch of places you can take selfies to here are electronic picture frames that feature different things around campus. You've got to join the classroom where students can literally explore what it's like to be a student in different majors surrounded by video screens showing them all these cool, like, experiential learning opportunities. So just talk to us about like why all of those interactive components are equally, if not more important than just saying, well, why doesn't like a tour guide just explain all that to them? Like, why doesn't that resonate the same way as it does when they're actually immersed in something?
Well, and that's a great question. And I think to sort of start at the end of your question, I don't necessarily think that somebody can replace that tour guide experience. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I think that sort of one-to-one student experience that you get from hearing from a student is just irreplaceable. I think when we think about the interactive elements of the Randall Welcome Center, what in my mind it was really designed to do was to have a nimble capability for us, for it to evolve as the campus evolved. And so I'll give you an example. We recently, over the past year and a half, 2 years, have been revamping our general education requirements, our gen ed curriculum. So that is a huge undertaking for any institution, especially a big flagship. And that's got to be explained to prospective students in a fairly clear and meaningful way. And one of the ways that they did that is they created a video that sort of walked through the different components of that. Well, we were able to get that into a spot within the Randall Welcome Center that allows the student to see that at a critical spot. You know, when they're sitting down right before the information session, that video plays along with a couple of other key points. And we chose that spot intentionally because we knew we would have a rapt audience to look at that. But that's one example of a way that something changed at Alabama. You're not going to have the same gen ed curriculum that you had last year. It's going to be new. This was the vehicle to explain that change. You have a new major, you have a new study abroad program, you have something that's different. That place is not static. And that really was the intentionality behind it, because what a school is now is not going to be what it is 5 years from now. And how does the place evolve? So again, it matches what people are actually getting. And we tried to make it as best we can so that it is easy to change out content. I'm not saying it's a flip of a switch. You've produced videos before, they don't happen overnight, but it goes a lot faster than it would, I think, if the place was just static in and of itself.
Increasing personalization is a key component when it comes to delivering a better campus visit experience. Every student doesn't have the same wants, needs, goals, and concerns when they go through their college search or when they come to campus for a visit. In episode 64, McKenzie Sullivan from the University of Akron outlined how they approach conversations with first-generation students and families differently from those with other prospective student groups.
Me and another colleague dove into some websites and really were trying to find what schools are already doing first-gen programming and what can we take from them and add to our own program. So we spent some time digging into the different jargon, the things that we use in our day-to-day as admissions counselors that families may not really know. So we took the time, looked through those websites, got a good idea of what some other schools were doing, and then added in things that we also felt were important. So these terms range from everything from the college search process to what's an admitted student and things that we kind of take for granted as general terms that we think everybody knows because we live in it every single day. So as we were going through those terms, we really picked the ones that seemed most relevant. So this is all just speaking to College 101 at this point. College 102 had not yet come up. So focusing on those terms within the college search, different degree types, majors, things like that. We just collected all these terms and ended up with a solid list of about 45 terms that we then put together in a glossary. So we have a handout that we provide to every single student family as they are walking through the door. So they have those list of terms. From there, we knew that we could not possibly get through 45 terms in a 20-minute presentation. So then we kind of weeded down what we thought were the most important ones to cover. So with that, again, that collaborative effort within the office, we really came up with the ones that were most important. So we started the presentation with what is first gen. A lot of first gen students don't even know that they're first gen because, again, it's another jargon that we use in our day-to-day lives. So we explain first gen, who they are. We explain that Akron has 57% first gen students within the student body. And then we go through each kind of portion. So this is starting with junior. So we start these with our junior open houses. And we're explaining the college search, what they need to do, what they can do to best prepare themselves. We tell them they are considered prospective students, and we define what a prospective student is and go from there into the admissions process, the application, where to find them, what the Common App is. A lot of students don't know what the Common App even is in their junior year. A lot of high schools are covering that information, but they're waiting until senior year to do so, maybe in, September during those senior meetings. So we're just making sure they have that information. And then we go over what the different decisions mean, and then going into a little bit of financial aid. Nothing crazy, really just what is the FAFSA and what does a financial aid offer. I usually stop pretty frequently during my presentations and do knowledge checks. Like, if you understand what I just said, or are we comprehending what's going on, or, however I want to phrase it in that moment, I just ask them to give me a thumbs up. And people are really receptive to making sure that, they're doing those things, that I'm aware that they are understanding what I am explaining. I also break up these presentations into sections and stop after each section and ask questions. So I ask them, are you understanding? Is there anything that I may be left out that you're wondering about?
Asking direct questions like McKenzie just mentioned is not only helpful during a campus visit experience, but doing it as your call to action can also make your email communications to prospective students feel more authentic and personal. Email continues to be the preferred medium for most students during their college search, but as high school junior Reece Baines and his dad Mickey explained in episode 63, students continue to ignore most of the emails colleges send because of how impersonal and overly scripted they continue to feel. All right, so Reece, you've received a lot of emails, right?
Yeah.
Dad said north of 400 at this point, and more than even 70 just over the last couple of weeks here in March when we're recording this. I find it interesting, but not surprising, right? That you've only opened literally, right, a handful.
I counted them. I don't know if you know this.
Right.
Did you? So I go and look at his email to see which is open and which isn't, and to see the. So when I share those numbers, I'm going to do the counts myself. He doesn't always know what I'm doing that. So it was I think the number is 70 as of Monday, in the month of March. 70 emails, and you'd open 6.
Yep.
What is it that colleges could do? Because your dad's already hit on the fact that, listen, most of what he's getting is not personalized. What could colleges do in your mind that would get you to open more emails?
They all look very, very copy and paste. Like somebody made one and they clicked like the mailing list of however many students and just sent it to everybody. Like it looks so, there's just nothing personal about it at all. And every time I open something that like catches my eye and I'm like, ooh, what is this? This looks somewhat interesting. And then I open it and I'm like, oh, no, it's not. Why did I have faith this time? Like, did I really think it was going to be different? I don't know why. Like, I don't think I've ever opened an email and been like impressed, only disappointed pretty much, because they all look the exact same. Like, I don't even remember what schools I opened. They all look the same. Every single email.
Well, and define, before you jump in, Mickey, what looks the same, because I think what you mean, but I'd love for the audience to hear. Be more specific, Reece, about what looks the same means.
Just about everything looks exactly the same. The thing at the top that's like a banner for their school, the same format of like broken up paragraphs that I'm not going to read because it's an email. I want it to be short and to the point, not split up into paragraphs. I wanted to read an email, not an essay. And they all say roughly the same thing with my name at the top. Hi, Reece. And then it just goes on about whatever they're trying to get me to do.
Like your dad said, one of the emails you opened recently, and Mickey, I saw your LinkedIn tweet or post, right, was 3 quick tips to build your college list.
Yes.
I don't
that
know
was
if you
what I was gonna
remember that
mention a second
message,
ago.
Reece, but like, what was it? Was it the subject line and you were like, ooh, that actually sounds like something I feel like I need at this point? Or like, help us understand.
I was curious about that. I was like, ooh, what's that? What's
Mhm.
that like? Because it wasn't the exact same subject line as everything else. So that looked interesting. And I don't remember what it said, but it actually looked worth opening up. So,
And this is what I was saying in that post. The difference in that email and every other email that he's received this month was that email was for him, not for the school. Because all the other ones are the school saying, look at me, we are awesome. And that one email said, here's something that will help you in your college search. That's the difference.
And with that, season 4 of Mission of Missions has come to a close. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and I'll see you back here with another new episode on August 26th. Thanks for listening to Mission Admissions. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's the largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.